A surveillance camera at a community center in Georgia recorded moments on July 26, 2022, at 9:46 p.m. that seems completely ordinary at first glance. The footage showed a 16-year-old girl conversing with a man dressed in a police uniform, standing just a few hundred feet away from where she lived. At that moment, she had no awareness of being monitored, nor could she have known this grainy recording would mark the final confirmed time anyone saw her breathing. The events that unfolded in the following minutes would devastate an entire family, reveal a dangerous predator concealed behind a police badge, and demonstrate that occasionally, those who pledge to safeguard us become the very threats we must fear. The individual who took Susana that evening wasn't some unknown figure hiding in darkness. This was a person the neighborhood relied upon, someone who drove patrol routes through their streets, someone wearing official attire with a legally authorized firearm. This represents the account of a police officer's transformation into a murderer, and how one family's darkest fear materialized into a community's startling truth. Earlier that same day, Susana Morales engaged in typical activities any 16-year-old might pursue on a summer evening. She informed her mother about visiting one friend, then altered her plans to see someone else instead. Completely routine teenage conduct that would later acquire devastating importance. The young woman with an infectious smile and passion for music spent her evening at Sterling Glen Apartments, a residential complex in Norcross, Georgia, located just beyond Atlanta's boundaries. Susana held the position of youngest child in her family. Everyone who encountered her showed deep affection. She dedicated hours to practicing makeup tutorials inside her bedroom, had recently begun learning the ukulele, and constantly filled their home with her vocal performances. Her mother would subsequently recall how Susana's melodies brought vitality and happiness to their residents. That particular Tuesday evening appeared indistinguishable from numerous others. Approximately 10 p.m., Susana started her journey homeward, a brief distance of perhaps half a mile along familiar routes. Her mobile device, equipped with the Life 360 tracking application, displayed her position in real time to family members seeking to ensure her safety. However, safety was about to transform into a deception. Precisely at 9:46 p.m., the community center camera recorded Susana moving along the roadside. Completely unaware that predatory observation tracked her every movement, she displayed calmness, showing no urgency, simply a teenager returning home following time spent with friends. Then circumstances took a terrible turn. What transpired next would confound investigators for multiple months. Susana's phone indicated she was reaching her neighborhood, approaching her home where safety should have been guaranteed. Her family, monitoring her location, observed as the recognizable blue indicator moved toward their street. Then, the indicator began traveling in the reverse direction. Initially, the movement appeared consistent with walking pace. Perhaps she'd overlooked something or chosen an alternate route. But then, something impossible occurred. According to GPS information, Susana was suddenly moving at 40 miles per hour. She possessed no driver's license, she owned no vehicle, and nobody from her family expected to collect her. A text message materialized on her phone. "I'm on my way home." But Susana never reached her destination. Instead, her phone continued its high-velocity journey away from safety, away from her residence, away from everything familiar. At 10:30 p.m., one of her friends received a crash notification from the Life 360 application. The phone had ceased movement. It would never relocate again. Susana's family initiated their search without delay, navigating the streets, calling her name, desperately hoping this represented some horrible misunderstanding. But when daylight arrived on July 27th, their daughter had vanished. Meanwhile, merely a few miles distant at Sterling Glen Apartments, a 22-year-old police officer named Miles Bryant was conducting his evening activities. Bryant performed duties as a courtesy officer at the complex, a role that provided him discounted rent in return for property patrols and resident security. He simultaneously served as a sworn officer with the Dorville Police Department and maintained service in the National Guard. To his neighbors, his professional peers, his supervisors, Miles Bryant seemed to embody precisely what law enforcement should exemplify. Devoted, responsible, perpetually ready to assist. But external appearances can prove catastrophically misleading. The following morning, July 27th, Bryant contacted police with a troubling notification. His service weapon, a Glock 19 pistol, had been stolen from his vehicle. Someone had broken into his truck during nighttime hours, he stated, removing his holster and gun while leaving other possessions undisturbed. The timing proved extraordinary, fewer than 12 hours following Susana Morales' disappearance. The courtesy officer residing at the precise apartment complex she'd been visiting was filing a report about a stolen firearm. But this merely represented the opening act of Miles Bryant's extensive deception. For Susana's family, the subsequent 6 months constituted a waking nightmare of uncertainty. Information arrived from throughout the country. Alleged sightings in Detroit, Nashville, Gatlinburg. Each possibility brought optimism, then devastating letdown when investigations yielded nothing. Police deployed drones, thermal imaging equipment, and aerial surveillance. They executed undercover operations, concerned that Susana might have been captured into human trafficking operations. Every available resource was utilized, every conceivable scenario examined. Her mother, Aura Morales, confronted the most agonizing torment, the torment of not knowing. Had her daughter perished? Was she enduring suffering somewhere? Was she attempting to return home? These questions plagued every conscious moment and penetrated every dream. Investigators would later comment, "It represents the absolute worst situation when closure remains unavailable. Emotionally debilitating doesn't adequately capture it. The reality exceeds those words." Throughout these 6 months, Miles Bryant continued performing his responsibilities as courtesy officer and police officer. He patrolled Sterling Glen Apartments, the exact location where Susana had last been observed. He maintained the identical professional manner that had generated respect among colleagues. Nobody harbored suspicions that the individual assisting in searching for the missing girl might possess exact knowledge of her location. February 6, 2023, 6 in the evening. An off-road enthusiast was navigating remote territories near Drowning Creek Road and Highway 316 in Decatur, Georgia. This location sat more than 20 miles from where Susana had vanished. His discovery altered everything. The victim's remains, tragically decomposed, scattered across the forest floor. No garments, no fibers, no forensic evidence survived. Only proof of time's passage in the Georgia wilderness. The medical examiner would subsequently confirm that roughly 95% of Susana's remains were recovered, though several portions remained missing, and without soft tissue, establishing cause of death became impossible. The absence of clothing suggested criminal activity. Individuals don't simply expire without clothing in remote woodlands unless criminal involvement occurred. For investigators, the discovery proved both devastating and problematic. They finally possessed answers for Susana's family, but they also confronted a homicide investigation with minimal physical evidence available. That's when they made a discovery that would completely expose the case. Approximately 100 feet from Susana's remains, investigators located something that had no business being there: a Glock 19 pistol lying on the forest floor. It hadn't been concealed underground or hidden. It appeared as though it had simply been dropped and abandoned. When they traced the serial number, the outcome proved shocking. This represented the identical weapon Miles Bryant had reported stolen on July 27th, the day following Susana's disappearance. The same gun that had supposedly been removed from his truck by unidentified criminals now rested in the woods where a murdered teenager had been discovered. The probability of this being coincidental approached impossibility. Investigators immediately concentrated on the courtesy officer who had appeared so cooperative, so troubled, so professional throughout the search for Susana. They were about to uncover that Miles Bryant had been executing an intricate deception from the very start. Detective Carter approached Bryant with caution. They required him to communicate, to explain the inexplicable connection between his weapon and the crime scene. But they also needed to employ strategy. Disclosing excessive information too rapidly could terminate his cooperation entirely. Bryant consented to visit the station for what he understood as a routine interview regarding his courtesy officer position. He possessed no awareness that investigators had already begun dismantling his meticulously constructed falsehoods. "We're literally speaking with everyone here," Detective Carter clarified casually. "We're simply attempting to document everything. We've obtained no leads, man. Hopefully, with your knowledge of everything occurring at the complex, we can perhaps assemble some pieces together." Bryant executed his performance flawlessly initially, proposing various theories about who might have taken Susana. He indicated gang members, transients, suspicious individuals who frequented the apartment complex. He appeared eager to contribute, concerned about the missing girl, frustrated by the investigation's lack of advancement. But investigators were observing for something entirely different. The subtle indicators that would expose when Bryant transitioned from cooperative witness to desperate suspect. While Bryant sustained his facade of innocence, Detective Carter was systematically examining phone records that would ultimately demolish every falsehood the officer had constructed. Bryant carried 2 phones, his personal device and a work phone distributed by the Dorville Police Department. Both phones generated digital footprints that could be monitored through cell tower information, creating a precise illustration of his movements on the night Susana disappeared. What investigators uncovered proved catastrophic to Bryant's innocence claims. Between 1 and 2 a.m. on July 27th, merely hours after Susana vanished, Bryant's phones were actively placing calls from cell towers positioned near Highway 316 in Decatur, the identical woodland stretch where Susana's body would be discovered 6 months subsequently. Bryant had informed investigators he spent that night driving around following an argument with his girlfriend, never acknowledging any journey to remote woods 20 miles distant. But the phone records couldn't lie. His device existed at the precise location where a murdered girl's remains would later emerge. When presented with this evidence, Bryant's carefully sustained composure started fracturing. "Listen to me," Detective Carter stated, voice steady yet firm. "Your device was the solitary one there. She disappeared. She died there. Your gun is there. Your phone is there. This represents your opportunity to discuss it." For the first time, Miles Bryant appeared genuinely shaken. The helpful courtesy officer facade dissolved, exposing something considerably darker beneath. "This is terrible," he whispered. "Maybe we're a monster." "Oh, absolutely not. Prove it incorrect." But the evidence proved overwhelming. Bryant's own digital footprint had positioned him at the crime scene. His weapon was discovered near the victim's remains. His story regarding the stolen gun collapsed under examination. Most incriminating of all, investigators discovered that Bryant had fabricated stories about never having encountered Susana previously. Witness testimony confirmed that he had actually approached Susana and her friends on prior occasions, offering them transportation in his black truck, encounters he had firmly denied during questioning. "If I killed somebody, I would have knowledge of that," Bryant objected. But his objections sounded hollow against the accumulating evidence. The case remained far from concluded, though. Phone records and circumstantial evidence could position Bryant at the scene, but establishing murder without a definitive cause of death would require prosecutors to construct a comprehensive portrait of who Miles Bryant genuinely was beneath his badge. As investigators examined deeper into Bryant's background, a disturbing pattern materialized. The helpful police officer had been maintaining a double existence for years, targeting vulnerable women while concealing himself behind his uniform and position of trust. Dating back to 2018, Bryant had begun burglarizing residences belonging to his high school classmates, specifically targeting young women. He would steal private possessions, personal items, anything that satisfied his distorted compulsions. Even following Susana's murder, his conduct intensified. Surveillance footage displayed him attempting to force entry into a young woman's apartment while wearing his National Guard fatigues, trying to open her door despite her obvious fear and resistance. During examinations of his digital devices, investigators found evidence that he had been utilizing women's phones to transmit illicit content to himself, a privacy violation that exposed his predatory mentality. The evidence constructed an image of someone who had been progressing toward violence for years, someone who exploited his authority and access to target victims who trusted his badge. But would a jury believe that this decorated officer, this National Guard member with commendations and positive performance evaluations, possessed the capability for kidnapping and murder? June 5, 2024. Nearly 2 years following the moment Susana Morales was taken from her family, Miles Bryant stood before a jury of his peers inside a Georgia courtroom. His responsibility was to serve and protect, the prosecutor informed jurors during opening arguments. He represents one of the individuals we should trust to enforce our laws, someone we should maintain at a higher standard. But he executed none of those obligations. Instead, he exploited the law and utilized his badge and his position to fulfill his own predatory impulses. The prosecution's case was constructed on circumstantial evidence, but it proved overwhelming in its completeness. Phone records positioned Bryant at the crime scene. His weapon was located near the victim's remains. Witness testimony established he had lied about never encountering Susana previously. Most powerfully, they presented evidence of his pattern of predatory conduct, the burglaries, the attempted break-ins, the escalating violence that culminated in murder. He is a cop who transformed into a killer, prosecutors contended. The defense confronted a challenging battle. Their strategy concentrated on the absence of direct physical evidence, no DNA connecting Bryant to Susana, no definitive cause of death, no eyewitness to the actual crime. "You don't have to like my client," the defense attorney acknowledged to jurors. And in fact, at the conclusion of this trial, you're going to think that he is the most callous, uncaring coward that you have ever witnessed. However, he is not guilty. They proposed alternative theories. Perhaps Susana had experienced an overdose. Perhaps she had been killed by someone else who coincidentally disposed of her body near Bryant's gun. But these theories lacked evidence and credibility. The defense also attempted to characterize Susana as a troubled teenager who might have placed herself in dangerous circumstances. But her friends and family testified that she was a normal 16-year-old who had been safely walking home from a routine visit with friends. Following just 2 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with their determination. Count 1, malice murder. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 2, felony murder. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Kidnapping. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Miles Bryant received a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole. The jury had seen through his deceptions and recognized him for what he truly represented, a predator who had utilized his badge as a hunting license. For Susana's family, the verdict brought some degree of justice, but it could never restore their beloved daughter and sister. "I knew at that moment that we got him," Detective Carter reflected. "We had accomplished our job. No one's above the law, and he received what he deserved." But the case raised disturbing questions about how someone like Miles Bryant had been able to operate for such an extended period without detection. How had his department overlooked the warning signs? How had the apartment complex failed to properly screen their courtesy officer? Susana's family has filed a civil lawsuit against Sterling Glen Apartments, contending that they should have conducted more comprehensive background checks before granting Bryant access to vulnerable residents. Their battle for accountability continues, driven by their determination to prevent other families from experiencing their devastating loss. The murder of Susana Morales exposed uncomfortable truths about predators who conceal themselves behind positions of authority. Miles Bryant wasn't some shadowy stranger lurking in alleys. He was someone the community trusted. Someone who wore a uniform and carried a badge. Someone who had sworn an oath to protect and serve. His crimes remind us that evil can wear any face, carry any credentials, and hide behind any institution. The very qualities that should make someone trustworthy, authority, access, community respect, can become weapons in the hands of those who abuse them. For law enforcement agencies, Bryant's case serves as a stark reminder of the importance of thorough background checks, ongoing psychological evaluation, and vigilant supervision of officers. One bad actor doesn't just destroy lives, they undermine public trust in all the good officers who genuinely serve their communities with honor. Detective Carter, who led the investigation, reflected on the broader implications. Just like any profession, you could run into having a bad egg. As a law enforcement officer, your job is to protect others who cannot be protected. This is a very sad case, apparently, of an officer who was not doing it for the right reasons. The investigation also highlighted the crucial role of modern technology in solving crimes. Without cell phone tracking data, without surveillance cameras, without digital forensics, Miles Bryant might never have been caught. But technology alone wasn't sufficient. It required dedicated investigators who refused to accept easy answers and kept pushing for the truth. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of this tragic case is the courage shown by Susana's family throughout their ordeal. During the trial, her mother Aura and sister Jasmine testified about their loss, sharing their pain with a courtroom full of strangers in hopes of securing justice. When asked how long she had waited for news about her daughter, Aura Morales answered in a voice breaking with emotion, "Almost 7 months." Asked what went through her mind when she heard Susana's body had been found, she replied through tears, "I did not want that news. I was waiting for her, and I'm still waiting for her." Their strength in the face of unimaginable loss inspired investigators to work tirelessly on the case. Detective Carter admitted that having a daughter the same age as Susana made the investigation deeply personal for him, driving him to pursue every lead and examine every piece of evidence. The case also demonstrated the vital importance of community involvement in solving crimes. The off-road enthusiast who discovered Susana's remains, the witnesses who remembered Bryant's suspicious behavior, the technology that preserved digital evidence, all contributed to building a case that brought a killer to justice. Miles Bryant will spend the rest of his life in prison, removed from society where he can never harm another innocent person. But his crimes continue to reverberate through the lives he shattered, Susana's family, who will never be whole again, his fellow officers who must work to rebuild trust he helped destroy, and the community that learned too late that the person they trusted to keep them safe was actually their greatest threat. Susana Morales should be alive today, pursuing her dreams, making music, bringing joy to her family. Instead, she became a victim of someone who perverted everything his badge was supposed to represent. Her memory deserves better than that. It deserves a commitment to ensuring that those entrusted with our safety are worthy of that trust. The case reminds us that in our modern world, predators don't always lurk in obvious places. They can be the courtesy officer patrolling your apartment complex, the helpful authority figure offering assistance, the uniformed professional you're taught to trust. Recognizing this reality isn't about becoming paranoid or suspicious of all authority. It's about remaining vigilant and teaching our children to trust their instincts, even when someone appears trustworthy. Miles Bryant thought his badge would protect him, that his position would place him above suspicion. He was wrong. Justice may sometimes move slowly, but it rarely fails to arrive for those patient enough to pursue it with dedication and courage. And while nothing can bring Susana Morales home, her family can take some comfort in knowing that her killer will never harm another innocent person. In the end, that may be the most fitting tribute to a young woman whose life was cut tragically short, ensuring that her death helped prevent other families from experiencing the same devastating loss. The last surveillance footage of Susana shows her walking confidently toward home, unaware of the danger ahead. Today, that image serves not just as evidence in a criminal case, but as a reminder of how precious and fragile life can be, and how important it is to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Miles Bryant failed in that most fundamental duty. He chose predation over protection, personal gratification over public service. His conviction ensures he will pay the ultimate price for that choice, spending the rest of his life behind the same kind of bars he once put others behind. Justice for Susana Morales has been served, but her memory lives on, a bright light, extinguished too soon, but never forgotten by those who loved her or by the investigators who fought to bring her killer to justice.